Did you know that Max Verstappen's crash in Australian qualifying wasn't simply a driver error? Red Bull has just revealed technical details that point to a much deeper problem with the car. An extremely fast car, but also extremely unstable at the limit. Before we continue, I want to read your comments. Do you think the crash was Verstappen's fault, or the fault of the new Red Bull? Because the real question is this: what did Red Bull actually discover after the crash that completely changes the interpretation of what happened in Melbourne? Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this video, we're going to analyze exactly what happened with Max Verstappen's crash in qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix, what Red Bull has revealed after the impact, and why this incident could tell us a lot about the true state of the new RB22. Because beyond the spin and the impact with the barriers, there's a technical detail that's causing concern within the team. The scene unfolds during one of the most critical moments of any Formula One weekend, the first phase of qualifying at Albert Park. It's a moment when all the drivers are pushing to the limit because any mistake could see them eliminated early. Verstappen heads out onto the track, knowing the margin for error is minimal, and that the new Red Bull has yet to show its full potential throughout the weekend. During his flying lap, he reaches one of the circuit's most demanding braking zones. It's then that something happens that is rarely seen from a driver of his caliber. The rear of the car suddenly loses stability, the car spins sharply, and it slides into the gravel, crashing into the barriers. The session is immediately red flagged, and his qualifying ends prematurely. The incident shocks the entire paddock because Verstappen almost never makes mistakes like this on a flying lap. What makes this moment even more intriguing is that it doesn't come out of nowhere. During the weekend's practice sessions, there were already signs that the car wasn't entirely comfortable on the Australian circuit. In free practice, the Red Bull had shown speed, but also very delicate handling when Verstappen tried to push it to the limit. In one of those runs, he even had a hard run into the gravel, damaging part of the car's floor. The team managed to repair the car, but internally they already knew that the RB22's balance was proving much harder to find than they had expected. This fragility in rear stability was beginning to reveal a pattern that many analysts overlooked until the qualifying crash. Another key detail is the car's technical context. Red Bull arrived in Australia with a significant upgrade package, both in aerodynamics and in the hybrid system developed in conjunction with Ford. On paper, these improvements promised a significant performance gain. But introducing so many new parts at once always carries a clear risk. The car may gain potential speed, but it can also become more difficult to balance. And that seems to be exactly what happened in Melbourne. The RB22 showed flashes of great pace, but at the same time demanded extreme precision under aggressive braking and during quick changes of direction. On a street circuit like Albert Park, where every millimeter counts, that kind of behavior can turn a fast lap into a very dangerous situation. The team's engineers began to recognize that the car's rear-end behavior was more problematic than expected when aggressive braking was combined with rapid changes of direction. Simply put, the car could feel stable through several corners and then suddenly lose grip very abruptly. This type of reaction is precisely what many analysts describe as a snap of stability, something that even the most experienced drivers barely have time to correct once it starts. At the same time, several technical reports began to point to the problem as potentially related to the car's aerodynamic window. The new package that Red Bull introduced in Australia aims to generate more downforce through the floor and diffuser, but this type of configuration tends to be very sensitive when the car changes height or when the driver brakes aggressively. If the airflow is interrupted for even a fraction of a second, the downforce at the rear can drop suddenly. This causes exactly the kind of loss of control we saw in qualifying. The car goes from having grip to having none practically without warning, and when that happens at high speed, the margin for reaction is minimal, even for someone with Verstappen's precision. Another point of discussion in the paddock was the adaptation process to the new hybrid system developed with Ford. This system delivers electric power more aggressively and efficiently, which on paper is a clear advantage in acceleration and corner exit. However, when a car receives more torque at critical moments, it also demands much finer control of the chassis balance and rear grip. Some analysts believe that this new way of deploying energy could be influencing how the car reacts at the limit, especially when the driver combines braking, cornering, and preparing for acceleration in the same corner sequence, something very common at the Albert Park circuit. From the team pit wall, It was explained that the RB22 remains a car with enormous potential, but its behavior at the limit is still difficult to read, even for its own engineers. In other words, it's not a car that forgives small inaccuracies. When everything is in the right window, the performance appears immediately. But when that window closes even slightly, the balance can change abruptly, and that's exactly what seems to have happened on that qualifying lap. The team's technical team also provided important clues. The engineers acknowledged that the rear of the car is proving particularly sensitive in certain phases of the corner, especially when the driver brakes hard while the car is still downforced. That transition between braking and corner entry is one of the most critical moments for any Formula One car. If the aerodynamic balance changes too quickly at that instant, rear grip can disappear suddenly. This forces the driver to drive with almost surgical precision, something Verstappen normally excels at, but which in this case seemed more difficult to control than usual. For his part, Verstappen also hinted that the car still doesn't give him the complete confidence he needs to attack in qualifying. Over the weekend, he had commented that the RB22 has speed and that the work done on the new technical package is promising, especially regarding power delivery and the efficiency of the hybrid system. However, he also made it clear that the car's balance can change significantly from lap to lap, making it difficult to find that exact point where a driver can attack with complete confidence. Looking at the RB22's behavior from a purely technical standpoint, the crash in Australia could be an early sign of a very specific characteristic of the car. Red Bull seems to have opted for an extremely aggressive aerodynamic concept. This means the car is designed to generate a huge amount of downforce when everything is working within its ideal window. The problem is that this type of setup is also often very sensitive to small variations in ride height, weight transfer under braking, and rear tire behavior. When these factors combine imperfectly, a loss of stability can appear suddenly, exactly as happened in qualifying. This characteristic could have direct consequences for how Verstappen will have to drive the car in the upcoming races. When a car has a narrow performance window, the driver must find a very delicate balance between attacking and conserving. Pushing too early in a lap can lead to an unexpected loss of grip, but driving too conservatively also means losing time to rivals with more predictable cars. That's one of the reasons why some teams prefer more stable designs, even if it means sacrificing some maximum performance. Red Bull, on the other hand, seems to have chosen the opposite approach, trusting that their development capabilities will allow them to widen that window as the season progresses. Another important consequence relates to the car's evolution throughout the season. If the main problem is related to the aerodynamic sensitivity of the floor and diffuser, then the engineers will have to work intensively on fine-tuning the car's platform. This includes modifications to the suspension stiffness, changes to the downforce distribution, and possibly adjustments to the car's ride height to stabilize the airflow under the car. The team doesn't believe the problem is a lack of speed, but rather a lack of complete understanding of the car under certain conditions. The new hybrid system and the collaboration with Ford appear to be yielding very promising results in terms of power delivery and energy efficiency. The engineers believe that once the aerodynamic balance is more consistent, this system could become a real advantage during races, especially on circuits where traction and energy management are crucial. This means the RB22's potential is still there, simply waiting for the team to stabilize its behavior at the limit. From Verstappen's perspective, the approach also seems quite clear. The Dutch driver knows the car has the necessary speed to fight at the front of the grid, but he also understands that at the start of a new technical phase of a championship, it's essential to gather data and understand the car race after race. This means that, in some qualifying sessions, he may have to be more cautious when pushing the limits until the team finds a setup that gives him the complete confidence he needs to extract every tenth of a second. And when Verstappen reaches that level of confidence with a competitive car, the result is usually very difficult to stop. What we've seen is a combination of several factors that converged at the worst possible moment. A new car with a very aggressive technical concept, a street circuit that punishes any slight loss of stability, and a driver who always pushes the limit to extract every millisecond of performance. When these variables come together, the margin between a perfect lap and an incident can be extremely small, even for a world champion accustomed to managing situations at the limit. The most interesting thing is that within Red Bull, there are no real signs of alarm regarding the car's performance. On the contrary, the internal feeling is that the RB22 has a very high performance ceiling once they fully understand its aerodynamic and mechanical behavior. In other words, the potential is still there. What the team needs now is to widen that operating window so that Verstappen can attack the limit with the total confidence that characterizes his driving style. So now I want to know your opinion. Do you think the problem was a mistake by Verstappen, or is the RB22 really still too unstable to be pushed to its limits? I'll read your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.